All right. First thing I'm going to do is go over the topo shader one more time that we've already sort of used and discussed, but just a quick refresher. You'll see it's a little different. I'm using white lines on this fairly flat and boring course, but you can still see the topography here. You'll see some colors in my shapes. So custom 3s are usually yellow. This is a deep rough. I've got a little darker. On the rough, I have just the sat. On the fairway, you can see there is some of the sat showing through. So how have I done that? Well, if you go into the shading, if you remember, all you need to do to get the satellite overhead is to change this value to your terrain size. So in this case, 2500. And then add your sat overlay image here. And that can be anything. It could be your Google Sat. It could be your Inkscapes. It could be a combination of both. Any image that you want for your sat. And then what I did was threw in yet another mix shader and mixed that, or here, this mix shader, and added the principal BDSF just to give some color. So base color and a mixing there. So dark green for rough, light green for fairway, no connection for the regular rough. I just left that pure satellite. And then just the mix factor is just, you know, how yellow do you want it versus how much do you want to see the satellite and lines together on that. And you could switch up the mix so that the lines are always on top. Let's see. So what you'd want to do was, so this is your lines, this is your sat. So you could take, let's see, how would I do this? I would want to unplug the color there. I would want to plug in the color and overwrite the lines. And then I'd want the lines mixed on top of that. Is that correct? And that's factoring. It's going to be a little trickier than that because it's using a computation to factor that. But anyway, there's a way you could do that, but it works pretty well this way. Just to give a little definition of each shape. So, and again, you have to be in rendered mode up here. So, or material preview, sorry, not rendered mode. And the problem is if you go back to viewport shading, occasionally you're going to run into some issues there, but it should just still be pulling color, and you should be able to just see your topo lines in that view. Again, just a reminder, this will be dynamic. So if I have proportional on, changing this is going to give me lines that way, as well as if you sculpt. All right, we've covered that more in a different video. I want to show you something new in this one. I purposefully have not added a shader to the green. This is just using the regular assigned shader out of meshing. And I've created a add-on. And so the way you install this, it's not just a shader, it's a whole system. So you'd go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you'll click up here, Install from Disk, and you'll find it. In this case, it is named CE Slope Shader. You'll just double click on that PY file, it's a script file, and run it, and you'll get up with this. You won't need to do anything here now that it's installed. You'll hit your N key, and you'll find it over here, and it's going to be under CE Tools. And you can see I've got a couple here, but this is what you're going to see, CE Slope Spectrum Shader. Here are your settings. This is set to some defaults that I saw on Green Maps David shared with me. This can't set a range. It can only set a value. So even though yours says like a color of or a slope of 3 to 4%, I can only do the middle of that. So you can change this to anything you want. And colors are hard coded into this, and they will look like they're pulled off this reference. So I'm using, whoops, didn't mean to do that. So I'm using this reference right here. And again, I can't do a range. I just chose in between. So on mine, you'll see like 3.25. You can change that if you don't like the way it is. And then I use these exact colors in my shader. So You enter your percentage here. These are the defaults. The colors are hard-coded. And then this is for your topo lines. You want to leave this as world space. And then minor increment is currently 1.2. That is a inches. So it's going to give you 10 slots, which are the stops. And then your line width is going to be how thick your topo lines are. And then the major step is for 6 inches, which is half a foot. So you're going to get a thick line every half a foot and a thin line on the 1/10 foot lines. And then this is smear reduction. You're going to notice that in the lower sloped, flatter areas, the lines are going to smear or get thicker. They're not going to be as precise. This can reduce that, although I can't make that perfect. I hope that doesn't matter too much. And then width compensation, you shouldn't have to do much with that. It's going to try to, again, keep the smoothing of the lines a little better. All you should have to do is hit Create Apply Slope Shader. After that, it will make the shader and assign it to whatever you select. So you'd select green. You'll hit this button, and then anytime you make a change here, you would hit Update, and it should change that. So here's the magic. You ready? Boom. Not the most interesting green in the world, but you can see it's creating that topo, and it's painting it in the same way that your green maps here show. I can't label them, so I don't have height labels, but you can see the thicker lines every half foot, and then the thin lines every 10th foot. Now, this, just like this, is dynamic. So if you want to adjust the terrain, in this case, we want to bump up the back of the screen, you'll see it change in real time to the slope. And that will work whether you're doing sculpt or working with vertices. And it will update everything at once. Now, also, I have Compute Top-Down Coverage button. And that will work. You'll see a pop-up when I click this. So I'm clicking on my green, Compute Top-Down. See this pop-up down here by my mouse? It's giving me the square footage, like you have on your other sheet, of band 1, which is the dark green, 0 to 2. And it only reports the first few bands. But if you are to go into a texting window, so if I drag this out and I set this to text editor, you'll see that you just have to hit this drop down and pick the report, and it will show you on each stop what your square meter is and square foot is and the percentage of coverage on the green. And again, that won't change dynamically, but if you make a change on here like that, and then you go back to object mode and compute, it will update your coverage just like that. So I know I might be somewhat reinventing the wheel here. I'm sure, obviously you have software that does this because you have provided me those maps, but I couldn't help but try to make something that would work in the GSPro workflow as well. And I don't see how it could hurt to have something that at least is comparable to what you're using. And I don't know if this is valuable on top of what you're using or in place of, but since you're in GSPro workflow so much now, I wanted to make this closer to what you expect in the real and use in the real world. And then the last thing to show you, this I did not make, but we have found something called multi-sculpt. And what you can do there is, you'll maybe know if you've used the sculpt tools that, let's go to sculpt mode. Well, it's not. If you go to sculpt mode and you, yeah, I'll show you what I mean. If you sculpt, say, a green, you can only sculpt one mesh at a time. So if I were to sculpt this, you can see it separates from what's next to it, right? Well, if I go back to object mode now and I select all these terrain shapes around the screen, let's grab bunkers, everything, and I do create multi-sculpt, and then I go into sculpt mode, I'm going to change my size of that, and I'm going to change my strength so it's pretty low. Now, if I were to sculpt, you can sculpt across all those shapes at once. And you can see the topo lines changing. and then you'd hit transfer multi-sculpt to quit and go back to object mode. And then again, it has updated everything dynamically, and you can go through back to the tools I have, and you can do a new compute, whoops, and you'll see everything update. So that's what I've been working on. I have some other ideas. I have more ideas on how we can kind of move some of this to the whole course for a different workflow. For nothing else, it'd work for fictional course design for us, and maybe this is a quick help for you guys as well. So let me know what you think. Give me ideas on ways to improve it or ways it might fit into a workflow for you.